Okay, now we have learned from the previous boxcar project. Let me grab one so you can see it. And what we want to do is see if we can improve on what we did before. So what we ended up with was this. And it's a little heavily weathered, and I did this crack and skin green just to try it. So the technique was sound, but can we improve it? I think we can, and we're going to give that a try. So someone suggested we try doing something in boxcar red. Now I went out and took some pictures of some high cube boxcars, and it just so happens I had some undecorated, and I'm going to use this Citadel Khorne Red. I'm also using my wet palette. I've got some paint on the wet palette, and so as you know, the wet palette I've got in mine 4 sheets of paper towel covered by a piece of baking parchment, not wax paper, parchment paper, and I've got some distilled water in here. I'm really starting to like this. This is really working. So I did one, and I got this. Now, I don't know if you can see really good, but it's good. This is definitely a good finish. This really worked. And I tried painting the top with a mixture of metal and gray. Didn't turn out so great as far as looking like an aluminum finish. I think I'm going to fix this, and I have a special way to do that. We'll do that in a little while. But what I have now, here's the shell. This time I'm using an old school technique that I learned way back when I wanted to make CNW locomotives. I didn't have an airbrush. So someone back then gave me the formula of using a Floquil Silver Fox paintbrush, scale coat paint, and Rustoleum Auto Primer. And I was told that if I was careful, I would get an excellent finish. I'm going to use that same technique now with the wet palette. So I have on here Rustoleum Gray Auto Primer. The thing that I like about the Gray Auto Primer, it's just a bit of a fuzzy surface. It has just a little tiny bit of texture, so paint really grips to it. Let's see what we can do. So let's go ahead. I've got, as always, I've got a little bit of distilled water. I've got some 91% alcohol for cleaning my brush. Get some water here. I've already got paint in the palette, and the thing is, you drag it out. Drag your paint out, and it becomes thin. It becomes very thin. And I want to say it becomes thin like lacquer paints are thin. Remember lacquer paints? They were so excellent. But they took a long time to dry. This literally dried as I was painting it. And I'm going to show you now. Okay, so I'm going to start on the end here. And on the end, I need to brush this way. And so here's the thing about painting by hand. 1, breathe, relax, aim, paint. You take a deep breath, get some paint, take a deep breath, let it out, aim, paint. If it's too thin, I'll see the gray underneath it. But I have found, as you will see, that we can deal with it. And I'm just using a flat. I'm using an orange handle brush which has, it's got a yellow bristle on it. These are just cheap brushes. They're not special. They come in a bargain pack. because I want this to be so that anybody can do this. And this is not going to be a huge investment in money. Alright, I've got an end. I can still see the gray, so my mix is a little thin, but I can drag out on my palette here. And let's just let that sit for a minute. Let's go to the other side. Try a little thicker. Now drag it. Aha! That is what we're looking for. Oh man, that's nice. Oh, and if we do just one stroke, wow, we get a nice. Is it airbrush quality? Not quite, but considering what we are planning to do with this, it is excellent quality. Now, we are not turning this into a rust bucket. All we want to do is get a nice boxcar and then give it some character. If we can give it a little character, that's what we want. It's not going to be factory new, but it is not going to be a rust bucket. And it's going to have some subtle... It's going to have some subtle kind of detailing to it. And as it dries, we'll see the spots that we missed. There'll be little white dots, and we'll go back and hit those. Let's hit this other side. See how light that is? Let's try that again. There we go. Oh my. We have got something now. And how long has it been since you painted a boxcar undecorated by hand and you didn't airbrush it? Well, very few people do that these days. And there's just something about it. You know, it's relaxing. I mean, you're really getting into doing some actual modeling. You know, I personally, I have a good airbrush setup. But there is definitely something about painting these by hand that I really enjoy. Okay, now we're going to go for the side. So we're going to get on the side. We need to go vertical strokes, because being an acrylic, if you go across, you can see a brush stroke underneath. So let's go down. Get this ladder. Oh yes, it's working. I have to say, the wet palette is really showing its value. And the Rustoleum Gray, if you have shaky hands like I do, the Rustoleum Gray Auto Primer really will help you in that it's forgiving. If you spread it on smooth, you won't see brush strokes. And we get a nice finish here. I would say we are really on to something. Now the downside to doing this red, you know, is we're going to need white decals. And I can make them. I don't usually want to. Not for a boxcar like this, because getting the data on the boxcar means small print. And I have the Alps printer, and it does not do such a great job with small print. Get my strokes in here. I'm thinking I made the right choice by using a brush with a bit of a angled edge on it there. Get underneath. will say that these Citadel paints, wow, when you follow the instructions and you watch the good painters who use them, which are generally gamers, Warhammer painters, but they are doing stuff that, as a model railroader, we don't know about some of the techniques that they have developed. And they mostly do hand painting. So they have really, really advanced the art of hand painting. And if you're old enough, you probably did a lot of this way back when, using lacquers and enamels. But I'll tell you what, doing this acrylic, I was not a fan. I thought, I'm never changing over to acrylic. I just don't like it. But I'm tired of waiting 2 weeks for enamels to dry. And, you know, they're only about, you airbrush on an enamel, there's a good chance that it won't turn out right. And you may be starting over. Enamels are easy to start over because using mean green or simple green in an ultrasonic cleaner will take the paint off and you can start over. But who wants to keep doing that? Let's find a way so we don't have to do that so much. And this is one of the ways. Is this going to be your go-to way for everything? No. You're still going to airbrush your really, really good stuff. But is this going to be the way to make that one-off cool boxcar, or you've got something undecorated and you just want to do something different? Yeah, this is your way. We can do something unique with this. You know, those of you that are big into operating sessions, which I kind of am, we don't often take the time to look carefully at the rolling stock. Mostly we're trying to find the piece. We're trying to find the car that we need to switch. Okay, now going to the end here, I can see some little spots, and I'm just going to dab those. And if I miss them, it's not going to matter, because later we're going to add what's called a shade to this. We're going to put on a super light shade so that the car stays kind of towards the newer look. Like, it's not, it'll still be kind of clean. We're definitely not going to make a rust bucket out of this. I, for one, I don't care for rust buckets. And when you see them, the first thing that comes to my mind when I see a rust bucket is someone made a mistake. They didn't want to start over, so they made it into a rust bucket to cover up that mistake. And I see that kind of a lot. And you know, that's what happens. You invest time into something like this, and when it doesn't turn out right, you just say, okay, I'm just going to weather it and be done with it. Let's see if we can make it so that we don't have to do that. Okay, now I'm going to pull some water in. And get it really smooth. It's getting very smooth. And getting these details. Try not to go side to side if I can help it, but there are some points where you have to. And then you got to feather it in. Like on these doors. But wow. You see how smooth that's going on? You can do this. And I, for one, enjoy seeing custom cars that people have made. I also enjoy seeing ones they have made. They're not perfection. You know, I like seeing that there's evidence that someone put some modeling effort into it. I find those to be more interesting than the perfect ones. As we talked about the Uncanny Valley. In the Uncanny Valley, if you achieve perfection, sometimes the perfection is overwhelming and we are repulsed by that. And that's why you see animated movies now. You don't see people looking as real as possible. You see them exaggerated. A good example is the movie The Incredibles. In The Incredibles, the people are more believable because they're somewhat out of proportion. And that was something that was discovered in animation. Our brains are more accepting of something that is not perfectly real. That does not mean we want to do sloppy work. Alright, let's let this guy dry. Let's go back to the other side and check him out. Oh, very nice. Any spots? Maybe a little bit around this ladder. Okay. Over here. Here's a streak. Alright. I like it. Okay, can I see brush strokes in here? If I look very carefully, let's take a look at the ones already dry. If I look very carefully, there is a hint of brush strokes. But otherwise this is totally acceptable. In fact, it's quite nice, I think. We're on to something. So now, what are we going to do about that roof? Alright, so I'm going to show you a secret technique. Now, many of you will not be familiar with this. Let's close up our wet palette. As I found, the wet palette was still good to go, and it was a week ago that I made it and used it, and it was still perfectly fine. Okay, what we're going to do now, alright, we got our paper towel ready. We're going to need our mineral spirits. We are going to need our special friend, chrome silver, I do believe. We're going to need our special friend, chrome silver. Mr. Metal Chrome Silver. Mr. Metal is a very interesting paint. Now let's find his brush. Do not ever, okay, here's the thing with a wet palette, never put a metallic paint on your wet palette, because the particles in the paint mix into your wet palette and then makes it unusable. Here's our Mr. Metal brush. So first, let's get him cleaned up a bit. Now, Mr. Metal is a secret I learned from a group of modelers who model what are called Gundams. Gundams are basically Japanese robots. They generally take a spot and they make it glossy black, and then they paint Mr. Metal over it. And Mr. Metal has the property that when he's dry, you can take a Q-tip or a microfiber cloth and polish it into real metal. And it's amazing stuff. And it comes in all different kinds of metals. Get them stirred up here. You got to be very careful, because Mr. Metal, you don't get that top on, it basically evaporates. However, I did find one time this thing was totally evaporated, and I added a little mineral spirits to it, and I got pretty much most of it back. Alright, let's take this one I already did. Let's see if Mr. Metal is up to the challenge. Okay. Now we want to get smooth with Mr. Metal here. So first I'm going to hit this edge. I'm going to hit the edge of the roof line, and I want to try to keep it in one stroke. Mr. Metal does not like to be painted over. Okay, let's hit the ends. If we have an end. Okay, we do have an end. So I'm very carefully. Breathe. Relax. Aim. Paint. Pretty close. Here's another thing to remember. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Fast is excellence. So you go slowly at first, and as you do more of these, and that is why I like to do more than one at a time. I've hit the ends on this one. Let's get this one. He's dry now. So let's hit his ends as long as we are in end mode right now. Let's breathe. Relax. Aim. Paint. Okay. Not bad. There we go. Okay, now let's get his other hands. Be careful, Mr. Metal does flow. So if you go over it, it could flow down into where you just painted. Carefully, smoothly. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So go slow and smooth. There we go. We are now around the tops. Okay, let's go back to the first one. Let that one set up. Okay, here's the tricky part. I'm not going to be terribly concerned about brush strokes because I'm going to polish this when I'm done. Flows. I have this thing about silver tops, and I like them. I see some spots I missed, so I can get that. Here comes the train. What do we got? AC 4400s. 1, 2 AC 44s, and it's going to be containers. There he goes, heading out. Okay, Mr. Metal is on here. I'm going to get the spot that I missed. There we go. That's one. Let's get the other one. Okay, here we go. Let's breathe. Relax. Aim. Brush. We just did this. We're speeding up now. We've got to smooth this down. And we are achieving some excellence. Been a long time since I've practiced painting these things by brush, but it's coming back. Using skills I have learned over the years, the idea is to mix those skills and still follow the method that is suggested by the Citadel paint line. And I've used their phone app to choose colors, and I think that's one of the coolest things ever. You go on the phone, you pick the color, and then it shows you all the variations. Oh my. We did it. We did it. Holy cow. Now, here's the problem. Now, in my mineral spirits, there is some metal. What we have now, in half an hour, well, I did one first, but roughly in 30 minutes, not only did we do a whole boxcar, we did the roof. And roughly we did two. And if it was three of them, this might have been 10 minutes longer. But they're looking smooth and nice. A little later, I'm going to polish these roofs. Mr. Metal takes a little bit more time to set up, but when it does, you take a Q-tip, and you will rub it like this lightly, and you'll start to polish it, and you will get an actual metal finish, and it is really, really cool. All right, so this is test 2. I am very pleased with the way these look. And we have really stepped up our game from this to this. We're really, really getting there. Okay, I'm going to have to find some decals, or make some decals, and see what we can do with this. Polish that roof, and then we're going to do layers. Oh, we're going to do shades, and then maybe we'll do layers.